Hi again from the garden. It's Christina from Sunshine and Flora. It is the very end of October. We're having beautiful weather here in Northwest Iowa. So I'm out in the garden this afternoon digging the rest of my dahlia tubers. Now it's about mid-60s today. However, we have had a deep freeze and so all of my plants are completely done for the year. The soil temperature is still really warm, so it's okay that they're in the ground. But next week our weather is changing, so it's definitely time to get these dug. If you saw the last video that I posted, you saw that I went through and cut all of my plants back and tagged all of my dahlias, and I did dig a couple to show you how they've multiplied over the season. But today I need to get all of them dug and prepped for winter storage. So the first part of this video, I want to dig all of my dahlia tubers, and in the second part of this video, I want to show you how I'm going to be storing them for winter. So you want to make sure and watch the entire video. But first, I'm going to get started and get these dug, and I want to show you how some of these look like coming out of the ground. Now, most of my dahlias were planted as single tubers, so when we dig these out of the ground, you're going to see just how much they actually multiply. And if you're not familiar with growing dahlias, that is how people are able to build their collection and multiply their plants every year, and that is how a lot of growers are able to sell their dahlia tubers. You plant one in the ground, you dig the clump out, and you may get 10 next year. It's pretty crazy. Now each variety of dahlia is different. They all don't multiply the same, but let's get started digging some up, and I'm going to show you what they look like. Okay, so this is one of my dahlia patches. Please ignore my ugly air conditioner behind me. Also, I hope the audio is okay for you guys. My garden is located downtown and the elevator is right next door to me. Of course, it's peak harvest time, so I can hear that running in the background. Hopefully you guys can't. And they just started some construction across the street, so I'm hoping that that background noise doesn't interfere with this. Anyway, this is one of my dahlia patches. I'm going to start here digging these up, and you can see the white tags throughout are all of the clumps that I need to dig. I cut them back last week and I marked them so that I knew exactly what variety I was digging up, because once you get a frost on your plants, you can't tell what anything is. So you definitely want to make sure and mark things before you dig them up, because then next year when you're taking all your dahlias out of storage, you know exactly what varieties you have and what you are planting. So I want to go ahead and dig some of these up and show you exactly what they look like when they come out of the ground. Now this first variety that I'm digging is called Night Silence. It was a great variety for me this year, so it definitely is on my grow list for next year. Oh, and this soil is a little bit tough. Let me go at it from the other side. Now you'll notice I'm not putting my shovel right next to the clump, because if I did, I would cut right into the tubers under the ground. So I'm going about a foot away when I dig these up. And basically, I just want to go underneath, loosen the soil, kind of pop it up. There it goes. There we go, that's popped out of the ground. Now our soil is really dry right now, so I'm not going to have a lot of mud on these, but there is going to be a lot of dirt sticking. So I want to clean as much of this off as possible. Wow, I can already tell there's a lot of tubers to this. Now there is a lot of dirt jammed up in here, so I'm not going to be putting these into storage today. I'm going to let them sit out probably 2 to 3 days. That's going to dry all this dirt, and then I can clean it further before I put it into storage for the winter. But I want to try to clean a little bit more off while we're outside, just so you guys can get a better look at it. All right. So this is what comes out of the ground. I planted one single tuber, which this large one right here is probably the mother tuber, and it developed all of these over the course of the season. Now there are a couple that are broken. Those will never grow again. And not all of these will probably have an eye for next year, but you can see really easily how your tubers can multiply. I had one, and there's probably, I don't know, maybe 6 usable ones on here. So that's a really great way to multiply the stock that you have. Now these roots, these will come off when I store them, and I will go through this with you guys. Anything that's broken, anything that has a broken neck, those will all get cut off for storage, but I should have a lot of really nice tubers. All right, I'm gonna set this aside and let's go ahead and dig another one. I'm gonna zoom the camera in closer. All right, so I have a couple varieties here I'm gonna dig next. This is Amber Queen. This is Caitlin's Joy. Let's see what these look like. So again, I'm going about a foot out just to kind of pop this up. There we go. Oh, this is a much smaller clump. Still a lot of tubers on it though. So this is the main mother tuber. I can actually see the stamp still on there. And then these little ones are the ones that developed. Not huge, but you know, there may be some eyes. And you know, next year I could store this just like this, and next year plant this whole thing in the ground and it would be just fine. You don't have to divide it, but you definitely can to get more plants. All right, I'm gonna set this aside. Let's dig Caitlin's Joy. There, I'm getting under it. I do have this bed covered with wood chips. If you're wondering why it looks so brown, I will leave these on for the winter. There also are some weeds in here, so those will be going, but most of this brown is wood chips. Okay, this one also is much smaller. So I may, you know, not even divide this, oops, in the spring. All right, so that just broke right off. This I will throw away. But this, here's a nice little cluster of tubers. And just for example, in the spring, you know, these aren't super large. I could easily cut it right here and have two plants with some small tubers that would produce just fine. But again, these might all end up having eyes, they may not. All right, let's keep digging. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and dig this one next. This one is called Miss Amara. This is a weed right in the middle of it, but this has two nice big stalks coming off of it. Let's see what this one looks like. There we go. Oh my gosh, this is a big one. Right away I can tell this is the mother tuber. There's a lot of dirt up in here. All right. That is a really nice looking clump also. Okay, you guys, so I think I'm just gonna go ahead and get started digging this whole patch. I have one more patch of about 24 more to dig up on the other end of the garden. I'll get these all dug up, take them inside, and show you what I end up with. Okay, you guys, all of my tubers are dug and they're all inside here. This is such a relief to have this done. And I think they all came out of the ground really good. You know, in hindsight, I probably should have used a potato fork because I did slice a couple tubers, but honestly, I'm going to have plenty. So let me just show you some of these tubers and what they look like. Some of these are absolutely massive. Look at that club of tubers. This one is called Night Silence. I mean, when you look at something like this that you started with one tuber and it produces that many, I mean, minimum I'll probably get 5 plants next year, which will be plenty for just me. Now, some of them are not as big as others, and I think it could be where I planted them. For example, look at this Cafe au lait rose. There are probably, well, I sliced one, but there's a mother tuber, a new tuber, and one more other new tuber, and the one I sliced. So really, it only produced 3 new tubers. I completely think this is where I planted it. This bed ended up not getting near as much sun as my other bed, so I know for next year not to plant dahlias in this spot. I mean, I'll still be able to plant these next year and get a plant, but it clearly did not produce. Same with this Night Queen. I mean, it produced probably 6 new tubers, which is great, but probably not near what it would have produced. I mean, then when you look at something like this that probably has 20 tubers on it, this was definitely from the bed that got more sun. But anyway, I am extremely happy with what I dug out of the ground today. So today is Friday. I'm going to let these sit here over the weekend and let the mud dry out off of them. It's actually not really mud. It's more just dirt that has a little moisture. We're in a severe drought right now, but I want to be able to let these dry out so I can shake as much of the dirt off as possible. Monday, I'm going to revisit these, which is when this video will continue. I'm going to put these all into storage for the winter, and I want to show you guys what methods I'm doing this year. I'm using one method that I used last year and one new one. So anyway, I'm going to go enjoy the weekend, and this video will continue Monday when I'm putting these into storage. Okay, you guys, so it's a few days later and I'm getting ready to get my dahlias into storage for the winter. I want to show you 2 different ways that I'm going to be storing them this year. One is the way that I stored them last year and had great success, and one is a different way that I have not tried before, but I have seen a lot of people use, and so I wanted to try that as well. But before I get these into storage, I need to clean these up a bit. Even though I'm storing them as clumps, I still need to clean them up a bit as far as I want to trim off some of the bad tubers that I know are never going to grow this year. It's just an easy step that I can knock off right now. So I'm just going to pick one random one here. And I'm just going to go through and kind of show you guys what I do, and then I will zoom in close up so you can see it as well. This particular one is a variety called American Dawn, and you can see it's not an overly large clump, but it does have some nice tubers. So this still has some dirt on it. So what I want to do is, while I'm over my table here, because I am inside and I don't want to make a huge mess, is I just want to kind of brush a little bit more of the dirt off. And as I'm brushing the dirt off, I am already noticing some eyes on the tuber. So when I zoom in close up for you guys, I will show you what those look like. But it is always fun to see those eyes, because then you know that the plant is alive, it's doing good, and it probably will grow next year. So what I'm going to cut off today are things that I know aren't going to grow again, like this little side shoot isn't going to do anything next year. This tuber has a broken neck right here. It's broken. That's why it is so loose. That is not going to grow. So I might as well just cut that off. So I have one of my little garden buckets here. These are from Gardener's Supply. I'm just going to clip them off into here, and then they're going to go out in compost. All right, so I've clipped those off. This tuber also got sliced while I was digging it, so I'm just gonna go ahead and cut that off as well. So that's good. So this is how this tuber is going to go into storage. So I'm just gonna set this towards the front. I'm gonna start making my way through the pile. Let me move the camera closer so I can show you the different parts of the dahlia clump and what I'm going to be cutting off, and I'll show you where you can see the eyes of the dahlia tubers. Okay, so here is the tuber I'm going to be working with next. This one is called Night Queen, and you can see it's got one large tuber, which was probably the mother tuber, and then a few little scraggly ones here and there, and then some decent sized ones here. So on this particular clump, I'm not seeing any that have broken necks, so I don't have to worry about cutting those off. But some of these roots, I am going to go ahead and pull those off and put those into compost. I'm going to just cut them off the ends. So basically I'm just cutting off all these extra roots here, like this one. We'll get rid of that one just to kind of clean things up a bit. Cut that off there. Whoops. My snip needs sharpening apparently. And some of these smaller tubers, I'm just gonna go ahead and cut those off at the top as well. These, you can see how these look a little wrinkled. These are actually pretty soft. So these might go bad over the winter. They're pretty small. I'm just going to go ahead and cut those off too. Okay, so this clump looks pretty good. I'm gonna go ahead and put it in storage like that. Let me pull a variety where I can show you what a broken neck looks like and what some of the eyes look like. So this is a really good example of one that has a broken neck on it. So I'm gonna go ahead and get this ready for storage. The first thing, there's quite a bit of dirt in here, so I'm just gonna brush off as much as possible. All right, so this is a variety called Maddie Boo, and you can see this one right in the middle is the mother tuber. If you look real closely, it's actually stamped with a blue stamp, so that is an easy giveaway that it's the mother tuber, but it's also the biggest one. And all of these roots off the end, I'm just gonna go ahead and cut these off right at the end of the tuber. And I'm gonna do that on all of these. This one also, we'll cut it right there. Okay, then see this tuber hanging down? See how much that moves? This right here is called the neck of the tuber, and that has snapped. That is why it is bending so much. This tuber will never grow again. So I want to go ahead and just cut it right here and get rid of that. There is also another one here that's broken. And unfortunately, this one is broken, so I'm going to get rid of this one also. All right, that one is all cleaned up and ready to go into storage. Now, one other thing I do want to do when I put these into storage, just to save space, I'm going to cut the stock of them down just a little bit further. And that is just going to save me a lot of space when I put them in my container. All right, so I'm gonna set this one aside. I wanna find a really good example where I can show you guys what the eyes look like. Okay, so I'm just gonna pull back this American Dawn that I cleaned before because I need to cut this stock off anyway. And I will put a close-up picture on the screen, but you can easily see the eyes of the tuber. They're a little swelling point. There is one right here and there is one right here. So I'm going to put a close-up on the screen and I will circle them so you can see what they look like. But they are red and they are the new growth points that are already forming on these dahlia tubers. So in order for your dahlia tuber to grow next season, it has to have an eye. If the tuber looks good, it's not broken, but it doesn't have an eye, it's not going to grow. Now, some people say that it's easier to see the eyes in the spring when they're developing. I'm really surprised that these are actually showing color. Sometimes they're just kind of a mounded spot with like a dark dot, if that makes sense, that you can tell it's an eye. These actually have colors, so they're really easy to spot. But one of the reasons I'm keeping these in clumps and waiting to divide them until next spring is I want to see if that is really true, and for me, whether I can see the eyes better in the spring. Last year when I divided all my tubers, I did it in the fall, and I was pretty conservative just because it was my first time dividing tubers, and I wanted to be as careful as possible. But next year I want to be able to get as many tubers as possible, so I may want to be a little more aggressive with how I'm cutting my tubers apart. So anyway, I'm going to go through and I'm going to get all of these cleaned up. I'll show you what I end up with, and then I want to show you how I'm going to store these tubers for the winter. Okay, so right off the bat, before I go through all of my tubers, this one is called Dazzle Me. All of these tubers feel a little bit soft and they look a little wrinkled. So I'm wondering if this one was out in the ground just a little too long. It just didn't come out of the ground well. I'm gonna go ahead and toss this because the way it's looking right now, I'm not sure it's gonna make it till spring, so why use my storage space? So if there's any others like that in this pile, I'm gonna put them in my compost bin and not even save them. All right, now I'm gonna get to it. Okay, so all of my clumps are clean and cut and they look just really nice and fresh and ready to go into storage. So the first method I want to show you guys is a saran wrap method. This is the method that I used last year when I stored my dahlia tubers. It worked great. Now I did cut them down to single tubers before I stored them last year, but if I have a small clump, I can easily wrap it up in saran wrap. It's not going to be a big deal. I think last year I stored maybe 50 to 60 tubers with the saran wrap method, and just a few of them, maybe 3 or 4, looked moldy and a little soggy and I had to throw them away. So I had really, really good luck. So I'm going to do the same thing this year, and then after I show you this method, I'll show you the other method. So I just have the regular Glad cling wrap. You can use name brand and generic. As long as it is just the regular clear saran wrap, it will work. All right, so I'm gonna take one of my smaller clumps. This is a perfect one. This has about 4 tubers on it. This is called brown sugar, also one of my favorite varieties this year. And basically, you're just gonna wrap it in saran wrap. I think I'm gonna tear off a piece first. And we all know how easy saran wrap is to work with. It just, you know, clings like it's supposed to. So basically, I'm just gonna roll it up in the saran wrap so it's nice and cozy. Oops, I gotta make sure I keep my tag in there, whether it's on it or not. I think I'll just put it in the saran wrap. Now I like to put a couple pieces on here because since they are not, you know, an exact shape, this is obviously poking out, so I need that covered. So I like to put the saran wrap around this way, and then I'm probably going to try to do it around this way. This end looks really nice and sealed off. This tag is sticking out, which is just fine. And you know, since the tag isn't actually around it, I could probably go ahead and just cut this off. So the tag is in there. This end is sealed. I just need to put another piece on this end. You just want to make sure that it's all completely enclosed so the air doesn't get in there to dry out. So that is all ready for storage. Now, since this is a clump and it has a tag in there, I'm not going to mark it any further. Last year when I stored all of my individual tubers, I did put a mark on the outside because some of them I would wrap a tuber up, then I would put another tuber in there so like they were all you know, kind of wrapped together so that they weren't all singles, if that makes sense to you guys. If you want to see exactly how I did it, you can reference my video from last year. And then I would just put a piece of masking tape on the outside of the package and it would say, for example, brown sugar, 5 tubers. Then I would know exactly how many are in there. But this is a whole clump, the tag is in there. I'm not going to mark it any further. Then to store these, I'm just using a regular cardboard box. I'm laying it in there and then I'm going to close it up. That's it. That's how I stored them last year. It was so easy. So I'm going to do a few more like this and get them in the box. This is another small one that'll work really good. This is called Maddie Boo. And again, I think I'm going to take the tag off of it and just put it in the saran wrap because it's a little bit easier to wrap that way, I think. Okay, one more to get this end sealed. Okay, there it is. And then I'm just gonna lay it in the box. Now I am gonna close this lid. I'm not gonna tape it, I'm just gonna fold them together. And then this is going to go in a cool, dark room down on a cement floor. You don't want it to be hot, you want it to be cool and dark, and then these can just live over the winter nice and protected. So that is the saran wrap method I use. Now we're going to do the second method, which is new to me. I'm going to be using a plastic tote and some wood chips. So let me go grab the wood chips. Okay, back with my wood chips. Now this is a bag of pine shavings. I got this at my local farm store. I'm not sure how big it is, the bag is, but it's a pretty good size. It was like $6. I picked up 3 of these, and this is what I'm going to use as the medium in this container to store all of my tubers. So I'm gonna slice this open. Maybe. Let me grab something else. Okay, I just grabbed a razor blade. That's going to open it way easier than my pruners. Then, just to get this started, I'm going to use a coffee mug, and I'm just going to scoop out the wood shavings and just put a nice layer on the bottom. I don't want to completely dump all these out on the floor since I'm inside, and this is really, really full. I think I'm going to put about an inch layer of these wood chips on the bottom of this container before I put any tubers in there. Now I have seen people use wood chips, I've seen people use vermiculite. This to me was a very economical option, easy to find. So I bought 3 bags at $6 a piece, so that's under $20. And if I have some left over, I can always add this to my compost pile for some browns, or I can put this as like a topper on my soil for the winter. It's gonna break down and then kind of make its own compost. So definitely usable either way. All right, so I have about an inch of the wood chips in the container. And then I'm going to make 1 layer of my tubers. This also to me is a much faster way to put things together than wrapping each one in saran wrap. Okay, I have 1 layer done. I'll put a picture on the screen of what this looks like. Okay, so now that I have all of those on the bottom, I'm going to add wood chips to the top. I want to completely cover them. Once I get this bag down a little ways, I'm going to pick it up and just dump it in here. But again, I don't want to dump it all over my floor. Oh, that's covering really good. A little bit more. Okay, so everything is covered. All I see is the wood chips. I do not see dahlia tubers. So, time to make another layer. Now I am putting these in here so there's a little bit of space between them, but I think I'm going to be able to fit all of these clumps in this single tote. Okay, that's going to do it. Let me grab my lid and I will be all done with this project. Okay, I am so glad to have that done. So this tote is actually going to go in my basement in where we keep all of our vegetables, like our squash and whatnot. It's kind of like our little root cellar. It stays about 55 to 60 degrees in there all winter. It is a cement room, so this will go down on the floor. It's dark in there, and these will be really happy all winter long, hopefully. And when I get ready to open them up in the spring and divide them, hopefully I can see the eyes, and they're all solid tubers. I can divide them and multiply my stock and then get them planted in the garden. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video and seen the 2 ways that I am storing dahlias this winter. I will definitely make sure to keep you updated on the spring on how things turn out. And I also am planning to order quite a few new varieties after the first of the year, so I will probably share that information with you as well. I'm constantly trying to add more to my inventory as I find out what varieties produce well and work well for me. So I have a list of what I want to order for this next year. So anyway, stay tuned for that and still a lot more gardening this fall. We'll see you soon.